Welcome. Today we are looking at the division of the kingdom, focusing on Rehoboam and Jeroboam. This is a key topic in your CRS exams. Pay close attention. Let us begin. First, let me explain how Solomon's disobedience led to the division. Solomon loved many foreign women. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. They turned his heart after other gods. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods. His heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been. He followed Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not follow the Lord completely as David his father had done. The Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. Although he had forbidden Solomon to follow other gods, Solomon did not keep the Lord's command. So the Lord said to Solomon, "Since this is your attitude, and you have not kept my covenant and my decrees, I will tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates. Nevertheless, for the sake of David your father, I will not do it during your lifetime. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. Yet I will not tear the whole kingdom from him, but will give him one tribe for the sake of David my servant, and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen." This was the judgment. The kingdom would be divided after Solomon's death. One tribe would remain with Solomon's descendants. The other 10 tribes would be given to another man. Now let me explain the rise of Jeroboam. Jeroboam was a capable man. Solomon saw that he was industrious and put him in charge of the whole labor force of the tribes of Joseph. One day, Jeroboam was going out of Jerusalem. The prophet Ahijah of Shiloh met him on the way. Ahijah had a new cloak on him. They were alone out in the country. Ahijah took hold of the new cloak he was wearing and tore it into 12 pieces. He said to Jeroboam, "Take 10 pieces for yourself, for this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. See, I am going to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hand and give you 10 tribes. But for the sake of David my servant, I will give him one tribe. I will do this because they have forsaken me and worshipped other gods." Ahijah also told Jeroboam that if he obeyed God's commands, God would build him a lasting dynasty. Solomon tried to kill Jeroboam, but Jeroboam fled to Egypt. He stayed there until Solomon's death. Now, let me explain Rehoboam's ascension to the throne. Solomon rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. His son Rehoboam became king in his place. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had gone there to make him king. Jeroboam heard about it in Egypt. He returned from Egypt. The people sent for Jeroboam. He and the whole assembly of Israel came to Rehoboam and said, "Your father put a heavy yoke on us. Now lighten the harsh labor and the heavy yoke he put on us, and we will serve you." Rehoboam answered, "Go away for 3 days, and then come back to me." So the people went away. Now, let me explain Rehoboam's foolish decision. King Rehoboam consulted the elders who had served his father Solomon during his lifetime. They advised him, "If you are kind to these people, and please them, and speak kindly to them, they will always be your servants." But Rehoboam rejected the advice of the elders. He consulted the young men who had grown up with him. He asked them, "What is your advice? How should we answer these people?" The young men said, "This is what you should tell them. My father made your yoke heavy. I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions." The young men gave foolish advice. They told Rehoboam to be harsh. They told him to threaten the people. 3 days later, Jeroboam and all the people returned to Rehoboam. The king answered them harshly. He rejected the advice of the elders. He followed the advice of the young men. He said, "My father made your yoke heavy. I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions." This was the foolish decision that tore the kingdom apart. Rehoboam did not listen to the people. He did not show kindness. He showed arrogance and harshness. Now let me explain the division of the kingdom. When all Israel saw that the king refused to listen to them, they answered the king, "What share do we have in David? What part in Jesse's son? To your tents, Israel. Look after your own house, David. So the Israelites went home, but Rehoboam still reigned over the Israelites who lived in the towns of Judah. King Rehoboam sent out Adoniram, who was in charge of forced labor. All Israel stoned him to death. King Rehoboam managed to get into his chariot and escape to Jerusalem. So Israel has been in rebellion against the house of David to this day. When all the Israelites heard that Jeroboam had returned, they sent and called him to the assembly. They made him king over all Israel. Only the tribe of Judah remained loyal to the house of David. The kingdom was divided. The northern kingdom was called Israel. It had 10 tribes. The southern kingdom was called Judah. It had 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin. This division happened because Solomon had disobeyed God. It also happened because Rehoboam was foolish and harsh. Now let me explain Jeroboam's sin. Jeroboam said to himself, "The kingdom will now likely revert to the house of David. If these people go up to offer sacrifices at the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem, their hearts will turn again to their lord, Rehoboam, king of Judah. They will kill me and return to King Rehoboam." So Jeroboam made 2 golden calves. He said to the people, "It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." He set up 1 calf in Bethel and the other in Dan. This was a terrible sin. Jeroboam was repeating the sin of Aaron at Mount Sinai. He was leading the people into idolatry. He built shrines on high places. He appointed priests from all sorts of people, even though they were not Levites. He instituted a festival on the 15th day of the 8th month, like the festival in Judah. He offered sacrifices on the altar. This became the sin of Jeroboam, a sin from which the northern kingdom never recovered. God sent a man of God to Bethel to confront Jeroboam. The man of God cried out against the altar, "Altar, altar! This is what the Lord says. A son named Josiah will be born to the house of David. On you he will sacrifice the priests of the high places who make offerings here." The man of God also gave a sign. He said, "This altar will be split apart, and the ashes on it will be poured out." When King Jeroboam heard this, he stretched out his hand from the altar and said, "Seize him." But his hand shriveled up. He could not pull it back. The altar was split apart, and its ashes poured out. The king said to the man of God, "Pray to the Lord your God for me, so that my hand may be restored." The man of God prayed, and the king's hand was restored. Jeroboam did not change his ways. He continued in his evil. He made priests for the high places from all sorts of people. This was the sin of the house of Jeroboam that led to its downfall and destruction from the face of the earth. Now let me explain the consequences of the division. The division of the kingdom had many consequences. First, it weakened both kingdoms. They were now smaller and less powerful than they had been as one nation. Second, it led to constant warfare between Israel and Judah. There was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam throughout their lifetimes. Third, it led to idolatry in the northern kingdom. Jeroboam set up golden calves. The northern kings continued in his sin. The northern kingdom never had a good king. All its kings were evil. Fourth, it led to the eventual destruction of the northern kingdom by Assyria in 722 BC. The 10 tribes were scattered and lost. Fifth, the southern kingdom of Judah continued for longer. It had some good kings who followed the Lord. But eventually, Judah was also destroyed and taken into exile in Babylon. The division was a tragedy. It happened because of Solomon's disobedience and Rehoboam's foolishness. A common exam question asks you to explain why the kingdom was divided. Here is a sample answer. The kingdom was divided for several reasons. First, Solomon disobeyed God by worshiping other gods. God told Solomon that he would tear the kingdom away from his son. Second, the prophet Ahijah told Jeroboam that he would become king over 10 tribes. Third, Rehoboam rejected the wise advice of the elders and followed the foolish advice of his young friends. He threatened to make the people's yoke even heavier. Because of these reasons, the 10 northern tribes rebelled and made Jeroboam their king. Another exam question asks you to discuss the sin of Jeroboam. Here is your answer. Jeroboam was afraid that the people would return to Rehoboam if they went to Jerusalem to worship. So he made 2 golden calves. He set one in Bethel and one in Dan. He told the people, "Here are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." This was idolatry. Jeroboam also appointed priests who were not Levites. He changed the festival dates. This became the sin of Jeroboam. It caused the northern kingdom to fall into idolatry and eventually be destroyed. Let me give you a quick summary. Solomon's disobedience led to God's judgment. The kingdom would be divided after his death. Jeroboam was told by the prophet Ahijah that he would rule 10 tribes. Rehoboam became king after Solomon. He rejected the wise advice of the elders. He followed the foolish advice of his young friends. He threatened to make the people's yoke heavier. The 10 northern tribes rebelled and made Jeroboam king. Jeroboam set up golden calves and led Israel into idolatry. Keep reviewing, keep practicing. See you in the next topic.